did that? Guess.
We're at Treblinka, where nearly 1 million Jews were murdered. I lost 86 members of my family. We know a large number came from Warsaw, and almost all the Warsaw Jews were transported here and put to death immediately. So some large number of my family is lying here in ashes somewhere.
They just took random people and just shot them in the woods for no reason.
That's right. Oh, that's right. There are people who deny the Holocaust occurred, and in our small way, we're adding new information and new research to the Holocaust that just reinforces that this horrible thing did happen.
Yeah.
No, usłyszałem, ktoś powiedział w tłumie, że pogoda taka jak i los tych...
תרח לפני שוכן נגד צורי, תשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחש לפוני כל ימי חיי, שבתי בבית אדוני ליאורך ימים.
You care about the suffering of Jews in the Holocaust? You care what happened to blacks from Africa who suffered the most horrible forms of degradation and slavery? And it's such a unique and unusual forum to bring together people who care about two tragedies of two groups, Jews and African Americans. How this all came about was quite unusual in that there was an event here at Madison Square Garden, and we had a group of Israeli basketball players. We had Tal Brody here, and we brought these basketball players who had been living near where, or at places where rockets were being fired on them from Gaza. And these kids, these teenagers, were living in bomb shelters. So we brought them here, and Bill was kind enough to allow them to meet the Knicks, horrors that occurred. So when one thinks of the Holocaust, one typically thinks of the extermination camps. We think of Auschwitz and Treblinka. But there's an overlooked aspect of the Holocaust, the mass murders. From September 1939 through 1942, the extermination camps were not operational in Poland, which was the center of gravity in the Holocaust. What was happening was that in Poland, there were police units who would go around to small towns and villages, mostly where most Jews lived, round them up, take them out to the woods or a forest and shoot them, and then have the dirt put on them and they would leave. And what's so fascinating about this is that the people who did this were not hardened Nazi Gestapo soldiers, but they were police units, people who were typically in their 40s and 50s, veterans of World War I, people who you cannot say were brainwashed by the Nazis in the 1930s, people who their formative years were formed under the Weimar Republic, relatively open, progressive society. And this one police unit called Unit 101 was the one that we were tracking. It came from Hamburg, which was the least Nazified of the German cities. In the last free election, it gave Hitler his lowest percentage of the vote in Hamburg. So these police officers coming from Hamburg also had anti-Nazi roots. Many of them were members of the Social Democratic Party, Communist Party in the 1920s when they were legal. And yet, these people were able up close to take women, children, elderly, have them dig a ditch and put a bullet in the back of their head. So what we wanted to do was to honor and preserve the memory of those people who were killed that way and erect a monument to put some dignity to their death. Now the question came, well, where are those graves? Well, I worked with a man named Zbyszek Nizinski, a Polish Christian, who went around from village to village in Poland asking the question, looking for people in their 70s and 80s, did you witness or see any mass murder of Jews? And about 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10 villagers, people say, oh my God, yes, I've never talked about it, but yes, we saw this, and they would show Zbyszek where the site was. A lot of these people were very young who witnessed it. They were aged 10 to 16, old enough to be brave, young enough to be foolish, hid behind a barn, a tree, witnessed it. And many of them, of course, are dying. So in one village, we went out to an area in the forest where we were told the Jews were killed. What's so unusual about this is the whole forest is full of trees, but in this one spot, nothing grows. In this one spot where the Jews were murdered, there is nothing there. And they were explaining to us that they watched, they hid behind a tree, and they saw the Jews murdered. Now, when you think of the Holocaust, we often hear a number, 6 million